I actually might need to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, because I want to look at the candidate moves here too. Okay, so English comes from England. No. Okay, so English is characterized by this move 1c4. And we're going to see how to play it effectively against a variety of defenses. So two most important things in openings are 1, plan, and 2, move order. So plan means where you want to put your pieces, and move order means in which order you put those pieces on those squares. In the opening, this is important because through various transpositions and whatnot, you could actually get a variation that you didn't want to get. So you have to be correct on your move orders. So let's first look at one of Black's most common responses to c4, which is e5. So I don't think I'm going to get to actually everything that Black can do in this one. So I'll probably have to split it up into 2, if not more parts. But okay. So already here we have a choice because a couple of things we could try here are knight c3. We could try knight f3. We could try g3. So the move order I prefer is to play g3. So the reason is, if you play knight c3, you open yourself up. I've explained this before to people, but you open yourself up to bishop b4 on move 2, which has actually been a favorite of Kramnik's among others. So with g3, you kind of eliminate some of those possibilities. Okay. So Black has 2 moves here. He can play knight c6 or knight f6. Other second moves are going to be covered in parts of other things. So like, you know, g6 or d6 or something are kind of separate things. But okay, let's look at knight c6. So we're going to look at knight c6 with as a feature of Black playing 3 g6 on the third move. Again, we'll look at like bishop c5, bishop b4 stuff separately. But we're going to look at knight c6 with the idea of fianchettoing the bishop. Okay. So bishop g2, g6, knight c3, bishop g7. And now as white, we play this move e4, which characterizes the Botvinnik system. So it's probably just best to kind of dive right into the positions, and then we'll kind of see what type of stuff happens. But so pretty much here, Black plays d6, knight g2. Okay, now here's where Black has a variety of choices. So Black's playing d6 because he wants to get this bishop out, and this d5 square is pretty much taboo. So when Black employs this setup, he's never going to be playing d5. So Black will always, pretty much without fail, play d6. And now Black has, like I said, a bunch of choices. So Black, first of all, has 2 squares he can move this knight to, knight e7 or knight f6. Okay, but he also has the choice of playing f5. Also could play bishop e6. Also can play knight d4. Also can play h5. And there's 6 moves. Okay, so we'll look at them one at a time. So we'll look at knight G7 first. So the reason black plays knight G7 is he wants to play F5. And by putting the knight on F6, he blocks in his F pawn. So oftentimes white will be playing F4, and black will similarly play F5. And as you notice, black's setup is very similar to white's. Only difference is white's play this move C4, and black's pawn is still on C7. Yeah, this is a chess position trainer. You can, I guess you can't see because I zoomed in a little bit, but yeah, it shows on the top, but you can't see it. But yeah, it's chess position trainer 4.1.1. Okay, so play D3. It'll transpose if you castle first, but castle, castle. And now, a couple of things black can try here. The main move is going to be bishop to E6. But let's look at a couple of other things. So if black plays knight D4, it's actually going to end up transposing into what happens if black plays knight D4 on move 6, but we're going to take knight E2 and C6, and this will transpose. Okay, if bishop D7, which is a bit passive, but knight D5, rook B8, bishop G5, F6, bishop E3, F5, queen D2, and white's very slightly better. This bishop on D7 is not in the best place. Because eventually black is going to take this knight on D5, and then white will recapture with the C pawn and open the C file and generate some pressure on this pawn on C7. So we can evaluate this as slight advantage white. Okay, so another possibility would be if white or black plays the pseudo-active bishop G4. And here white can either play H3 or F3. But we kind of want to remove this bishop from its active position. So F3 is fine. Bishop E6, and again knight D5. F5, bishop E3, queen D7, queen D2, rook E8, rook E1, knight C8, and B3. And again, white's slightly better. Notice that where the pieces are going in these positions, it's going to be a common theme. Okay. So another choice would be to play F5 immediately. And again, we're going to be making this knight D5 move. And here, bishop E6, bishop E3, queen D7 will transpose. Yeah, listen to Kwame Derek. Right click on the video and change the quality to low, it should help. But I'm not using XSplit. Okay, if FE4, DE4, bishop G4, F3, bishop E6, bishop E3, queen D7, and again queen D2, rook AD1, B6, and now you can play B4, rook F8, and actually white here is much better because there's always C5 looming. And these C and D files are going to be opening to white's advantage because there's really nothing at all going down the F file whatsoever. So I'll say slight, but it's actually more than slight. Okay, so, okay, and another option is to play h6 to stop a bishop g5 by white. But again, my bishop's not going to g5, it's going to e3, so bishop e3, knight d4, knight d4, ad4, knight e7, queen e7, bishop d2, c6, queen b3, fe4, de4, or sorry, not de4. Bishop e4, hitting g6. And again, this is slightly better for white. Wait, I didn't mean to make it equal. Slightly better for white. Okay. So a couple more options from this position are king h8. And then after, again, bishop e3, bishop e6, same ideas. Queen d2, queen d7, rook a e1, rook a e8, and f4 should be, again, slightly better for white. And finally, if black captures the pesky knight, knight takes d5, c takes d5, knight e7. Again, always take with the c pawn in these variations because you want to open the c file. That's the whole point. So when you play this knight d5, you always capture the c pawn. And if knight d4, by the way, in this position, then knight takes, e takes, bishop d2, bishop d7, rook c1. Notice that white already is immediate pressure on the c pawn, but notice that black doesn't have the same luxury on the e pawn because the e pawn's on e4. So that's really the main difference between white setup and black setup. Since white played this move e4, he's compromised the square d4, but at the same time, he's pushed his pawn 2 squares forward, so now this pawn is no longer backwards, where it would be on e2, whereas this pawn on c7 is backwards because of this pawn on d5. So that's really like the whole strategy of white's opening, is to try to open the c file and then just have his half open file be better than black's half open file. So this is kind of a perfect example of that. So here, king h8 and queen b3, and again, white's better. So let me show you the other thing, which is, oh, if he plays knight e7 instead of knight d4. So if knight e7 here, now you can play this strong move d4. Which gets rid of our kind of weakness on d3. Now fe4, de5. I'm going after de5. Rather than capturing on e4 with the bishop, we prefer to take with the knight, so we play knight c3. And then after king h8, strong move bishop g5 in order to get a good knight versus bad bishop situation. So after h6, bishop e7, queen e7, knight e4. So now notice the difference between this knight on e4 and this bishop on g7. And notice this knight on e4 cannot be chased away because there's no pawn on the f file anymore. And this pawn on e5 is isolated. So is the pawn on d5, but you notice that black has no pieces that can make good use of the square d6, or even d4 for that matter, because he has 2 bishops. So this is just better for white. Don't worry, I see what you guys are asking in chat. I just want to go through this last line and then I'll address all your issues, so don't worry. I see you all. Okay. So Cheat was asking about f4. It just loses a pawn. I just take. It doesn't gain anything for you. Because the problem is I still have this f pawn. So take, I just play, bishop takes f4. And this square is defended 4 times. So f4 just hangs the pawn. So I just play bishop takes f4, bishop g3, and then f4, and you have nothing. I mean, if you take on b2, I play rook b1, and then whatever. I probably take with the d knight, actually. Probably not even take with the bishop and not let you take on b2. I forgot about that. So yeah, you probably just play knight d f4, and then just go back to d5 and then play f4, and then you're just better. And then follower, what was the line were you asking about, c5 or c6? Sorry, it was this last line, right? Oh no, it was the, oh yeah, it was this line, right? So cd5, and then it was the knight d4 line. Take, right? So bishop d2, bishop d7, rook c1, and then you were asking about c5, right? And then follower was asking about c6, right? Okay. So the problems with c5 and c6 is they just lose a pawn, right? So c5 or c6, I take. If you take with the pawn, I take on f5, I take on c6. Yeah. And similarly, if you take with the bishop, I take on f5, you take on g2, and I play queen b3 and queen b7. Same thing. In any case, this c file is going to be good for me. And also notice this pawn on d6 is weak, so I can play like bishop b4, hit that, double in the c file. So yeah, so this e takes f5 is going to be a point that knowing when to take that pawn is crucial. But okay, so anyway, let's go back to this position. So we said the main move is bishop e6. Okay, so now in this position, you don't want to play this move bishop to e3 because it allows knight to d4, and there the idea is when black plays knight d4, you often want to take and play knight e2, and then this pawn structure with this pawn on d4 doesn't actually help black all that much, because notice again, by playing e takes d4, he's making this e file half open, but this pawn on e4 means that a rook on e8 is just kind of biting on granite on e4. Whereas when we play knight d5 and he takes on d5 and we take with c takes d5, again, we're targeting the c7 pawn. So there's a huge difference. So in general, black doesn't want to play a capture on d5, but white is fine with capturing on d4. But if we play bishop e3, we can't capture on d4 because e takes d4 will fork the bishop and the knight. So we don't want to put our bishop and knight in that type of situation. So that's why we play knight to d5 here first. Because now our knight's no longer on c3. So now we can play bishop e3 on the following move. Okay. So queen d7. And f5 will just transpose, by the way. So f5, bishop e3, queen d7 just transposes. Okay, so queen d7. If you want, you can gain a tempo and play bishop g5, f6, bishop e3, just to make another move. I mean, it basically transposes, but you basically want your bishop on e3 at the end anyway. So bishop e3. And now, what is white quasi-threatening here? With this move bishop e3. It's similar to what you're threatening as black in the Botvinnik. If you guys remember when I was helping cheat out. So yeah, you're threatening d4. So for example, just to show you what happens if d4 is allowed, let's say black plays something like king h8. So now d4, knight g8, knight takes c7. This is one of the tricks that are available. Queen takes c7, now d5 wins the piece back. knight d8, de, knight e6. And now notice what's weak. Well, the pawn on d6 is weak. And we have a nice open file to it. And black can't put a piece on d4 because we have that square covered 3 times. So we just defend our c-pawn, rook c1, knight e7, queen d2 getting ready to double, knight c6. So he's trying to put a piece on d4. So we're trying to undermine it, f4, knight cd4, f5, knight e2, queen e2, knight d4, queen d2. And white's much better. f6 is a huge threat. And we have kingside attack potential, as well as we can just threaten to take on d4 next move. And you know, if he plays like f6, for example, you just take on d4 and win a pawn. So black's almost lost here. So this is clear advantage for white. And then the other choice, other than the main move, is to play knight d4 right away in order to stop d4. But now, of course, we can take with a knight. Pawn takes. Now we can play this cute move, bishop h6. So this is also a little bit of a theme. So now if bishop takes, of course, we have knight f6, forking the king and queen. And if knight takes knight, we take the bishop first, then we take the knight. So black plays c5 here. Then take, queen d2, take. Again, c takes. Bishop h3, take. And it looks like, because the material is reduced, it should be about equal. But in actuality, after f4, queen d7, f5, f6, h4, queen e7, rook f3, white actually has a strong attack here. Just because he has more mobility, he can transfer his rooks from the queen side to the king side. So this is actually better for white, even though there's only queens and rooks left. Okay, so slight advantage white. Okay, so the main move here is to play, instead of knight d4, to play this move f5 to immediately attack the e4 pawn. So now d4 doesn't make as much sense because black can take on e4. So here, white just wants to continue his development, queen d2. So we're defending this pawn on b2 now. And we're also adding another defender to f4. So now we have what? How many guys in f4? 1, 2, 3, 4. So f4 is well guarded. So here, black tries to double with rook f7. And now a nice prophylactic move from white is this move f3. So it ensures that this move f4 never makes sense. So it looks kind of weird to lock in your own bishop, but it lends support to the e-pawn. And on f4 we can just take, and then our bishop always has this f2 square to kind of head back to. So rook a f8. And now we'd like to play this move b3, but unfortunately this rook would hang after like f4, take. So we want to kind of move this rook off of this diagonal. So we play rook a e1, king h8, b3, knight g8. So black makes this transfer of the knight because on e7 it's kind of stuck. And now this is one of the important points of the whole system, is in comparison to other openings, you want to capture this pawn on f5, not so much so that this pawn can't recapture, but you don't want this pawn to be recaptured by the knight. Because this knight on f5 helps control d4 and attacks this e3 bishop. So as a general rule in this system, you want to take this pawn only when the knight is not able to recapture. So given that, what do we do? Well, of course, we take the pawn. Okay. Notice if black plays pawn takes, what would white play? What would white play? If g takes. Black actually played bishop takes in the game, but if g takes, what would white play? Well, white would play the move f4. Notice how f4 simultaneously opens up our bishop and blocks in his. But in the game, black played bishop takes. So now we play d4 instead. And now bishop h3. Knight dc3. So now this knight's fulfilled its obligation, and we want to play this move d5 and knight e4. Notice that this e4 square is great for our pieces now. So notice that now that there's no pawn at f5, we can have e4 for our pieces. Again, if g takes, we can play f4, and then the bishop is stuck. So bishop takes g2, king takes g2, ed4, knight d4, knight g7. And white's a little bit better, just because his rook on e1 is on the open file. His pieces are slightly more actively placed, and his pawns have a little more space. And black's rooks are kind of just biting on this f3 pawn, which isn't really doing much. I mean, it's not a great advantage, but I mean, black played pretty well, so. But it's a pleasant position to play, right? I mean, would you guys prefer to be white here or black here? Yeah. So I mean, it's not much, but yeah, I think pretty much you guys would prefer to be white for sure. So again, it's nothing groundbreaking, but you know, it's hard to be much better in the opening if black doesn't do anything wrong. So okay, so now let's look at another opportunity that black can play, or another variation. So these are the moves that we have to consider. So far we just considered this knight g7. Okay, now let's consider f5, which is a very Dutch move. It can actually transpose from some Dutch orders, like a f5 on move 1, or even f5 on move 2. So here you just want to play d3, and then knight f6. But let's look at a couple of other things. So if he plays knight ge7, it basically transposes back into what we just saw after castle, castle, knight d5, right? So this is exactly what we just saw. So the other thing that black can try is, yeah, I'm only going to do probably c4, e5. But I want to give you guys like a really nice solid foundation that you guys can work with. And you guys can watch this video multiple times and get something new from it every time. I kind of want you guys to be able to use this as like a reference for when you play this opening. And if you see something you don't know, you can look it up. But yeah, like I said, I'm not going to do the whole thing today. Probably only go through, like I said, just this Botvinnik system, which is with knight c6 and g6. But okay, I'll give you guys a little quiz now. So what happens if black plays this move, knight h6? So this is actually not an atypical move. The knight goes to f7, helps support the e5 square. So do you guys know maybe what white should do here? So followers thinking a bit too dogmatically. Sometimes you have to strike while the iron is hot and not not be averse to trying new things. So the move we actually want to play here is the move h4. And the reason is, notice that by not playing knight f6, black lost control of the h5 square. So we actually have some plan of playing h5 and ripping open this h file and using this rook on this h file. So it turns out it's not so easy for black to meet this idea. I'll show you guys a variation or two to kind of cement this, but say like black plays knight f7, now h5, g5, ef5, bishop f5, bishop d5, h6, bishop e3. And if you notice, black's light squares are a bit Swiss cheesy. I mean, e6 is weak, g6 is weak. I'm not even sure what side black's castling on, to be quite honest. So I would prefer white in this position. I think you guys would agree. This pawn on h5 is doing some work. Another idea would be if black plays, instead of knight f7, bishop e6. And then here, knight d5, knight f7, bishop e3, queen d7, again h5, gh5, rook h5, fe4, and bishop e4. And again, white's much better. h7 is weak. And I would argue that every one of white's pieces is better than every one of black's pieces, including the king, by the way. So I would say that white's much better there. Another example would be if, say, black just castles, then bishop g5, queen d7, knight d5, knight f7. Now, bishop f6 is kind of tricky. Knight f d8. So he wants to go knight e6 and knight d4 is the point. A lot of maneuvering in these bottom positions because the center is closed. Okay, so bishop takes, queen takes, queen d2, knight e6. And now, the reason we played h4, h5. And then after knight cd4, hg, hg, knight d4, knight d4, rook h6. So you're threatening rook takes g6, actually, is the point. So it's kind of cute. And then black played g5, and you play rook g6 anyway, and black resigned. So that's another cute thing. So obviously this is just winning for white, but... okay. So that's a couple of examples of that. It's not very likely that you'll see that move, though, but just want to let you know that that was available. So knight to f6 is the main move, and as you see now you're controlling h5, so you're not going to be playing h4 after this move. Okay, so we're just going to castle. Go back to the bishop move. Sure. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. If you guys have questions, please stop me, because it's for you guys. So I'm just trying to get through what I want to get through, but if you guys have questions, please. So yeah, you want to go back to what, the bishop f6 move? So what was it after castles? Bishop g5, queen d7, knight d5, knight f7. This move, bishop f6, here. Is this what you're asking about? Okay, yeah. What is your question? Yeah. Yeah, the point is you can't take because of knight takes, forking the queen and king, right? And if bishop h6, bishop e7 wins. Because you're forking the rook in the fork. Yeah, again, this fork, remember we saw the same fork before when we played bishop h6? When the queen's on d7, the king's on g8, always look for that knight f6 fork. Okay. I'm glad you asked, though, because I don't want you to have a question. Okay, So again, let's go back to knight f6. So again, well, white's going to castle. So again, so black should castle here, but again, if black prematurely takes this pawn, this structure should always end up being better for white. After DE4. Castle. And now rook b1 makes sense. a5, b3, bishop e6, and knight d5. And again, the structure just seems to favor white. You know, you have ideas of maybe playing bishop a3 and c5 and trying to target the d6 pawn. You could potentially play f4 and f5. Play like f3, bishop e3, and c5. You could do a variety of things, but it seems that white has more play than black, because without this f pawn, it's not like black can really challenge white's pawns, whereas white can challenge black's pawns. So black has to basically just sit around and wait for white to decide when he wants to open up the position, which is usually not a recipe for success. So let's go back to castle, castle. Okay. So knight d5 is again what we're going to be playing here. And so the best move is probably bishop e6, similar to what we saw before. So white's idea in these positions is going to be to play this move, bishop to g5, and pin this knight, and try to exchange his bishop for the knight potentially. So a couple of ideas that black has to try to eliminate that pin before it happens are, let's say h6 for example, and then just h3, knight e7, bishop e3, c6, knight f6, rook f6, queen d2, hitting the pawn, king h7, and now d4. And again, this should be good for white. Okay, let's look at somewhat more radical way to avoid the pin, which is to simply move the knight, play knight d7. So again, this knight is trying to route itself to d4. So he wants to like knight c5, knight e6, and knight ed4, while also avoiding this bishop g5. But here it's not going to quite work, because after e takes f5, rook takes f5, h4, again this h4 move, knight c5, bishop g5. The point of h4 is to get this bishop to g5, so queen d7, and now b4. Then after h6, bishop e3, knight e6, bishop e4, and all of a sudden black's lost, because now this pawn on g6 is hanging. The rook has to move and g6 is defended. So this is just winning. Okay, one more try would be knight h5. So you're threatening f4, but the knight is kind of out of play here. Why does black insert h6? I mean, he doesn't. I showed already what happens on h6, right? That was the one I showed before. This one. After h3, knight e7, bishop e3, c6. Take, take, queen d2, king h7, and d4. Is that what you're asking? Oh, why does black play h6 here, you mean? I mean, what else is he going to do? I mean, where's his knight going to go? Right? Yeah. So he's trying to remove this bishop from... Yeah. Sorry. I mean, again, this is just like a sideline. I'm just showing you why stuff is bad. Yeah, the problem with 96 is I can play b5. b5 and 97 wins. No, cheat just b5 and then 97. Yeah, exactly. And I win the exchange. Anyway. Yep, exactly. Nobody else getting a drink. No, that's me. Okay, so... are we clear on this line, or...? Okay. So... what was I about? Knight h5. Okay. So again, f4 is threatened, but after ef5, bishop f5, okay, and then if gf5, now knight ec3, threatening this knight, and then bishop g5, and this is good. So, bishop f5. Okay, and now I'm playing h3. So the point of h3 is not really so much to threaten g4, but it's to, I mean, it's not like, I'm gonna play g4, but it's not so much to win a piece, but it's to have a grip on the light squares. So after the bishop moves, I play g4 anyway. And then when the knight moves to f6, bishop g5, knight e7, knight takes, bishop takes, rook takes, b3, c6, and then again d4. And notice that this g4 pawn helps stop the knight from going to f5. And so d4 is strong and white again is better. So let's go back to okay, the main move here, which is bishop e6. Okay, so bishop g5 pin, queen d7, okay, queen d2, and now black plays knight h5. So black's really trying to get this f4 in. But now notice that there's no knight that can take on f5. There hasn't been for a while, so now we can take on f5. Bishop takes. Okay, again, now if pawn takes, now notice this queen's not on d1, so this knight ec3 doesn't make as much sense, but what do we play after gf5? See if you guys are paying attention. Yeah, absolutely. f4. So after f4, king h8, rook at e1, rook at e8, and b4. White's slightly better again. Okay, just wanted to make sure I drove that point home. Okay, but black plays bishop takes instead. And now we can't play this h3 anymore, unfortunately, that we wanted to in the previous variation, because the bishop and queen are on that square. So we have to go to plan B. And normally white would play like this move rook a e1 to get this rook off of the diagonal before playing b4. But here we can actually play b4 right away, because e4 is not really a problem. On e4, you can just play d4. So, king h8, b5, knight d8, and now bishop e3. And the point is, you can't play knight e6, because I actually win a piece after h3. Do you guys see that? So if knight e6, h3, so I'm threatening g4, which not only forks these two pieces, but also traps the bishop. So you can't stop both the fork and the trap, because the bishop's trapped and moving the knight doesn't stop the bishop from being trapped. So it kind of forestalls knight e6. And again, here white's slightly better. So if, for example, something like c6, take, knight dc3, knight e6, or actually knight f6 first. Now f3 to stop knight g4, knight e6, rook b1, or actually probably, let me delete this, probably rook d1 to try to prepare d4. And if knight c5, maybe take and queen e3, forking these two pawns. And again, I think white's better. Bishop trapped. Oh yeah. No, yeah. It is, you're right. Yeah, so on f3, you'd have to play like bishop e6 first, I guess. Or maybe bishop h3, actually. And then, like, rook d1, take, knight e6. And now maybe just d4 or something. And again, I think white's better. I mean, in general, white's better, right? In the opening. So, like, these slight advantages that I'm saying, you know, it just means it's more comfortable to play against. But, I mean, white's better in every opening. So, it's not like this is bad for black. It's just nature of chess. White's better in the opening. Okay. Okay, so let's see what happens on bishop e6. So bishop e6, d3. Yeah, I mean, it's like minute. I mean, you know, black could easily win. It's just, it's slightly more comfortable for white, but it should be because he's white. Okay, so if black plays knight e7, this transposes, of course, to what we saw after castle, knight d5, right? This is all the stuff we saw before. And we can tell we saw it before because I have arrows here. So we're going to look at what happens after d3 if black just plays queen d7 right away. So now black might be trying to castle queenside quickly, or trying to play f5 quickly without necessarily having to develop this knight. Okay, so here knight d5 is the most accurate. Is there any variation with black hits an f4? No, I mean, if black's going to play f4 at some point, it's only because white allows it and it's like a dubious pawn sacrifice. There's never going to be, I mean, you see how I'm combating f4 in pretty much every variation by taking an f5. And then if you take with the pawn, I play f4 myself. If you take with the bishop, then it's a different thing because there's no f pawn anymore. But you notice how white is being very proactive in stopping a potential f4. But you're right, because that is one of black's main ideas, if it's possible. So, like you shouldn't be able to get your pawn to the 5th rank by force, So, okay. So after knight d5, black usually tries to get rid of this knight with this pawn push c6. So knight ce7, d4, c6. Oops, not queen c6, sorry. Okay, so c6. So if you like endgames, you can play knight takes c7. I'm going to show the main move first, which is knight e3. But this is really not terrible if you just want to take d5. Because after take, the bishop is trapped and only has 1 square, so bishop h3. And then take, queen a4, and here queen d7 is best, so queen d7, take, bishop e3. And after f5, f3, basically by force we have this endgame where white is slightly better. So if you like playing endgames and you like kind of grinding your opponent down, you can play this. White is definitely better. I don't know if it's enough to claim any sort of advantage, or serious advantage, but better bishop, more space. Going to be able to use the c-file. So if this is your cup of tea, you can do this. I know Higgs would rush into this so fast he'd probably fall. But if you guys want to try to keep pieces on the board and play more of a middle game, you can play knight e3 as well. So it's just with the more trades that happen, like the position kind of veers closer to a draw. But again, if you enjoy playing simplified positions, then that might be for you. So again, bishop h3. So here we can castle, take, ed4, knight d4. Okay, so a more normal move would be something like knight f6, and then f3, castle, queen d3. And here, kind of like a Maroczy bind type position, more space, and we can eventually put pressure on this d6 pawn. So it's kind of like a good Maroczy bind for white, because notice we have no bishop. Usually the kind of downfall of white in the Maroczy bind is the fact that his bishop's not doing much, but notice that we got rid of our quote-unquote bad bishop, so this is a good Maroczy bind for white. Okay, but let's say black's a little crazy and wants to play this move. h5. So he's trying to play some sort of like h4, h takes g3, and queen h3 mate ideas. So here, simply knight f3 to stop h4, and also remove the knight from take by the bishop. Then after f5, ef5, gf5, king g1, f4. So the point of king g1 is to play knight g2, and then fg3, fg3, and white's slightly better here. Okay. So that's that move. So we'll go to the 4th move, which is what happens if black plays immediate knight d4. So this is actually somewhat common. But again, move order is important. So, yeah, I'm going to show something that's not related to this, but just so you guys know. Okay, so yeah, so assume you, for some reason, because of faulty move order, you played d3. I just want to show something. So bishop g4 might look nasty, but actually this move h3 is fine. So the point is knight f3 actually loses a piece, because after king f1, this knight's trapped, and the bishop has to move away from it. And if bishop f3, bishop takes, knight takes, and king f1. And it looks weird because I've lost the right to castle, but after king g2, I'm kind of castling by hand, and actually white's much better here because this knight will have to go back to d4, and then I can play f4, knight takes d4, stuff like that. So just if for some reason you get caught in some move order thing where black plays bishop g4 in this type of position, you can actually play h3 and it's fine. I've actually had this happen to me before, so just notice that that's an option. But again, like follower said, the right move is actually to capture on d4. Okay, so let me move this up. So yeah, I made this point before. I want to make it again though, that when black places a knight on d4, you want to capture it probably as soon as possible in general. And this is why you kind of don't play this move bishop e3 until after you play knight d5. Because when they play knight d4, again, you can't really take when the bishop's on e3, because after pawn takes, it forks the knight and the bishop. But in this position, when the knight just moves to d4, you know, you want to take it. So knight takes, pawn takes, and then knight e2 is the correct square. Don't want to go knight d5, because it's really not going to be able to stay there forever. So knight e2, knight e7, d3. So the problem for black in this type of position is that without this pawn on e5, f4 is something that can happen more easily, and even potentially e5. And if I can play e5, then this bishop suddenly is unleashed. So that's why this knight d4 prematurely is often not the best plan. So let me just show you an example of why. So castle, oops, castle, castle. Okay. So c6. And we got this from a different variation, but h3. Just strengthening the position, stopping bishop g4, potential ideas. Bishop e6, b3, f5, bishop b2, hitting d4, queen b6, rook b1, g5, ef5, bishop f5, and now g4, bishop g6, f4. So after pawn takes, knight takes, notice that white has mobilized his kingside pawn majority. This bishop is kind of stuck biting on granite and has to continually defend this pawn. This knight's getting ready to hop into various places. So white's slightly better again. And then we'll finally take a look at the last move, which was this move h5. So it's a bit venomous. You have to be careful. Allowing h4 is actually a bit of a problem. So you actually have to respond to h5 with h4. Seems kind of weird, but it turns out that black playing h5 is worse for him than us playing h4. So now that you played h5, the most logical is for black to try to defend this g5 square, and the way to do that is from f7. So to get to f7, you play knight h6. So now that black's played h5, knight h6 is more logical than knight f6. Or even knight e7. And again, we're just going to continue developing our pieces the normal way, bishop e6. Okay, and now, of course, knight d5 before bishop e3, because again, knight d4 is a problem, so knight d5. Castle. Castle. f5, and now bishop g5. So part of the problem with the h5 move is bishop can strongly go to g5, queen d7, queen d2, hitting h6, so now knight or king h7 actually first. b4, knight d8. And now notice that now this knight is no longer controlling d4. Now we can play d4. So whenever black tries to eject this knight from d5 by moving this knight back, oftentimes it's a timely d4. So d4, and then back to knight c6, and you guys see a strong move for white here. A little bit of a tactic. You guys see a potential tic-tac or tactic? So the little tic-tac or tactic we have is this cute move, knight f6, take and take. And now we're threatening the rook on f8, and we're also threatening d5. So bishop takes c4, take on f8, take on f8, take on e5, take on, or sorry, take on f5, take on f5, and d5. And white's better. Okay. So let's look at the last line. Let's look at the last line, which is knight f6. So knight f6, castle, castle. And here is the important move order thing. So normally white would play d3 here, right? But because black played this move knight f6, we actually want to play f4 immediately. Exactly. So the threat here is f5, h3, g4, and just kingside pawn storm. So for example, if knight d4, d3, c5, now f5 is very strong. Because if gf5, then bishop g5, h6, bishop h4. Notice the bishop cannot be moved from the square. Bishop e6, knight d5, take, 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 and take. And this is very strong. Very strong for white. Because if he moves his pawn, this knight is going to be lost. So he has to play something like queen d7, rook takes f5, and like knight e8. And this is just really bad. So that's when f5 can be its most lethal. Okay, so black has to play something like bishop e6 here. So I'll move that up, make that the main variation. So the point is, now on f5 you can just take on c4. But let me look at one more thing with you guys, which is g takes f4, or sorry, e takes f4. Okay, so the question is, what do you recapture with, guys? What do you recapture with? Every Russian schoolboy knows. Every Russian schoolboy knows. Yeah, you take with a g-pawn. Okay, and now another reason why we didn't play d3 comes to light. And what's that reason? Well, that reason is, after the move, knight h5, we can play d4 in one go. And now we got some nice pawns, don't we? We got c4, we got d4, we got e4, we got f4. Our pawns are ready to go. All right? Yeah. So, let me show one more thing that actually black can play that's okay here, which is knight d4. And here actually white should play h3. I don't know why it shows d3, but h3 to stop bishop g4. And then c6, d3, 98, take, 92, f5, and then king h2. And slightly better for white. Yeah, with the 4-pawn setup, I mean, the king's a little exposed, but nothing to worry about. Yeah, maybe that's why, but h3 should be the move there. If 97, then d4 is fine. I guess the other thing I can show is bishop g4, h3, bishop e2, 92, ef4 again. Every Russian schoolboy knows. Queen e7, d3, knight d7, now d4, f5, e5, knight d8, knight c3. And white has a huge center, and it's hard for black to chip at it because he's already played this move f5. Okay. So let's go back to the main move. Well, it's a quote of Botvinnik's that every Russian schoolboy knows, that when you capture pawn on f4 to recapture with the g pawn as opposed to a piece. It's actually a quote from a world champion, so just trying to ingrain it in your guys' minds by saying every time that every Russian schoolboy knows. Because it's something that's just like common knowledge among chess players. So when black plays f5, you don't want him to take back with the knight, but when he plays f4 and he takes, you go take my g pawn off the knight. Yeah, exactly. 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 And you can play d4. And then on f5 you can play e5 is the point. So yeah, it's kind of different as black and as white. But again, these are just general rules. Okay, so anyway, bishop e6. So now you have to defend this pawn, so d3. Okay, so now you're again threatening f5 with that same thing, bishop g5 idea. So black plays queen d7 to stop f5 because now he can take twice. And also bishop g5 doesn't pin the knight. Notice that as well. So king h1. Rook a d8, bishop e3, knight g4. And now the point of king h1 is felt because we want to play bishop g1. So I know you guys are going to ask why I play king h1, and that's why. Because we can't play h3 because it hangs, but we want to put our bishop on this diagonal, so we need to give it a flight square. So bishop g1, f5, and then of course black can't take this with a knight, so we take with a pawn. Pawn takes, we've already played f4, so we don't need to do that. Queen d2, a6, rook a e1, and here again white is slightly better. At some opportune moment we can potentially play d4. Alright, so this covers the actual true Botvinnik system, which is when black plays 1 e5, 2 knights e6, and 3 g6. So this is really the only time you're going to play like a true Botvinnik setup. So in the next future opening forums for this system, we'll go over other black setups and how to combat them.